Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we find ourselves at an interesting time. I think we need to discuss what I'm going to, I guess, call a NATO civil war in some way, shape, or form, and the rewriting of narratives around the conflict. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and let's talk about this conflict and where we are. Let's talk about this. Um, One of the things, and I took some little notes here. So one of the things I find interesting, I'll start with this, is at Donald Trump's CPAC speech here recently, he said, he was hoping to get a deal within the next week. I find that interesting because I know one of the I don't remember if it was Keith Kellogg or one of Donald's underlings recently said, yes, Donald Trump sends you and he says, go get me a deal. And then he calls every I'm being facetious, of course, but, he calls every 5 minutes and says, where's the deal? Where's the deal? In other words, he wants this done yesterday. And people are like, well, I think it's going to take months and maybe 6 months, maybe by spring. But I think Donald Trump wants it done. Yes. If you look at what's happening, how quickly he's moving with his agenda, he wants it done yesterday. So he's saying he wants the deal this week. And I think the reason Donald Trump wants a deal so fast is because of he and his very, very powerful faction of the ruling elite that's working along with him are looking to rethink, to redirect, reimagine U.S. monetary and economic policy, both internally and worldwide. And I think that getting this Russia thing done is a critical part. They see, I think they see this as a hindrance to their world economic policy, and that they want to, not just a hindrance, but I think in a way a critical part, because they see Russia, accurately so, as a very, very potentially a very, very powerful economic ally. And part of that, I think, is they want to get oil prices down in a hurry, and they want to do some negotiating with them. And they also want to deal in the Middle East. So they're trying to tamp down some of the military conflicts so that they can focus on what they're really looking to change, and that is economics. You can agree or disagree with it, but that it seems very apparent that that's the direction they're going. That's the plan here. So let's start here. One of the things that I find it interesting that Donald Trump is doing, and we're going to talk about this whole thing, this NATO. I'm going to set a context for the NATO civil war before I actually get into the civil war. Number one, Donald Trump is rewriting the narrative for the Ukraine project, away from it being a Ukraine project. Now, one can argue that there's a certain falsehood to that, because, for instance, let me give you an example to make my point. So Donald Trump is saying, we gave you all of these weapons and we didn't get anything out of it, and you've got to pay us back. And we spent $350 billion in your country. Basically, we gave it to you. And that Zelensky swindled us out of this money, and he lied and he played Joe Biden like a violin, like a fiddle, as they say, et cetera. Right. So that part of the narrative is what? That this wasn't a Ukraine project, that it wasn't a proxy war, that the United States didn't make this happen, that the United States didn't look at Ukraine and say, this is going to be a valuable tool. And one could argue that rather than Ukraine hoodwinking and swindling the United States out of money, the neocons in the US hoodwinked and swindled and bullied Ukraine out of its independence, out of its sovereignty, turned it into weaponized Ukraine. My argument has been all along, one of the things that the neocons did, the regime change operation, is to weaponize anger. What they do is this: Oh man, you guys are really mad at the Russians. Yes, you hate the Russians. Yeah, now we got to stoke that. Now we got to feed that. Now we got to expand that until you're so furious and you hate the Russians so bad that you're irrational. And once we get to the point where you're irrational people do stupid things. So the CIA goes in there, they pump up the Azov and all of these other neo-Nazi groups, and they kind of give them a real grip of power, and they even push their ideology culturally all around the country. They support it. They do everything they can to support the hatred of Russians. They want every Ukrainian to despise Russians for all their worth. And once they get the Ukrainians to be so emotional they hate Russians, they can then weaponize that anger, redirect it towards Russians, and these idiots will go storming right into, you know, a buzzsaw. They will jump in a cage with a bear because they're irrational. So one could argue that the Ukrainians were victims and that a particular segment of their society was weaponized against the entire country to the detriment of the entire country, and then it was thrown into a wood chipper. Once they got the country where they wanted, they threw the whole damn country into a wood chipper, right? Okay, that's my interpretation of the long-term, you know, from Ukraine project from the 1950s, you know, after World War II, when the CIA was in there, then all the way to the, you know, the Orange Revolution or whatever it was in 2003, 4, 5, up in that time to 2014. It was all a process of weaponizing a country against the interests of the country. Now, what is Donald Trump doing? In order to do the things he wants to do and ask the things he's asked, he has to rewrite that narrative. His narrative is so what he does is this: he accepts certain truths. He accepts that, look, the issue of NATO expansion is real, and that's at the root of the problem. So he tacitly kind of accepts that, right? And that gives credibility to the Russians' arguments. But what does it do? It helps Trump get out of it faster, because by acknowledging that the Russians have some legitimate claims and some legitimate gripes, it gives him the ability to negotiate with the Russians, to say to the American people, I had to give the Russians something because this and that, because what happened to them was unfair. They have some legitimate gripes. He can't negotiate with the Russians and get this thing over like he wants it over if he does not acknowledge that the Russians have some legitimate gripes, and then otherwise he doesn't have any grounds to meet them for negotiations and to give them something. As we say in Zen, the tiger and the shark shall never fight, for they have no common ground. If you want to negotiate with someone, you got to have common ground. And if you don't have common ground, rhetorically and from a narrative perspective, you have to create the common ground. A lot of people don't understand that, right? If a guy, you're negotiating with a guy and the guy's, you know, got a gun on you, he's got hostages, whatever, right? You want to start blah, 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 blah. And at some point you say, yeah, you know, look, you know, we can work this out. And I'm Garland. Your name? Bill. Now I've associated, I'm a human being. I'm Garland. I'm Chris. I'm Dave. I'm Bill. Harder to shoot somebody and more. And I've created, we're both human beings and we both have a name, and now we can talk and I can negotiate a little bit better, right? I got to create some common ground with this guy who's just got a gun on me, on the other hostages. Once I create common ground with him, it gives me an ability to talk with him. Our minds start to lock in on concepts. I'm kind of emotionally and intellectually mirroring him a little bit. I create ground for mirroring. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the depths of hostage negotiations, but you get my point. Donald Trump had to create some common ground with the Russians rhetorically and narratively. So number one, he now has to take a turn and say, the Ukraine, here's the way it works. Ukraine is, he's basically saying Ukraine is an independent sovereign nation. Under his narrative, Ukraine is still an independent sovereign nation to some extent, but it's an irresponsible one. It's a petulant child. It's a stupid one. And therefore, since it's like this, it's like dad saying, look, son, you live in my house, and I bought you a car when you turned 17, and I buy your clothes, and I'm paying for your school. I have a right to have some say in your life. If you're doing something that's really stupid, you need to cut that out, right? So it's dad saying, I contribute to your whole life. I keep you going. And now I say, you shouldn't do this. I'll do what I want, Dad. And dad's reminding you, wait a minute, man, you live in my house, dude. You know, you used the foul language at your mother. You said you raised your voice at your mother. And I said, don't raise your voice at your mother. But I can do what I want now, Dad. I pay all the bills here. That car sitting in the driveway I bought. You know, your clothes on your back I bought. You know, everything you do, I've helped you. And so you're going to go to college in another year. You want me to help you. So you're going to have to take, I'm dad. I'm not just a guy on the street. You're going to have to listen to me. You know, we got to have some transactional here. If I'm going to do everything for you as a father, you're going to have to be responsible. And when I tell you, you can't raise your voice at your mother, that means you can't raise your voice. That's the kind of problems you have with boys when they start feeling they're, you know, young and they're, mom, you can't tell me what to do. They may do that with mom before they do with dad. Because dad might, things may go bad with dad a little bit more. Anyway, so my point is, he's creating a narrative where Ukraine is a petulant child and Donald Trump has to come in, the responsible adults, which would be Trump and Putin, come in and fix this. But not just Ukraine. Additionally, the EU is the same thing. Because what does Donald Trump say? They're like, how come you're not including us? And Donald Trump is like, you had 3 years to get a deal. He said that. He said, you had 3 years and you screwed it up, right? You were irresponsible. You weren't good at what you were supposed to be doing, right? You had 3 years to get a deal and you couldn't get a deal. A half-baked negotiator could have got a deal and you didn't get a deal. Now, the truth of it is they did get a deal and the US stopped in and flopped it, right? The truth of the EU is there were voices in the EU saying perhaps we should be a little, you know, more responsible here. And the Biden administration stomped them out, overthrew them. Robert Fico got shot 10 or 15 times. I mean, they literally tried to take the guy out, let's be honest. So the bottom line is, in order to accomplish his goals, Trump is getting rid of the narrative. He's ignoring, not destroying the narrative that there was a Ukraine project, that Ukraine was a project that the neocons representing the United States. So I could say the neocons, but the neocon faction, the United States utilized Europe, sacrificed the European economy, sacrificed the economy and the lives of Ukraine to use it as a tool against Russia. So the new narrative is the Ukrainians were an irresponsible country and they wanted a war against Russia, and the United States financially sponsored it and we got nothing out of it. And the Europeans are a bunch of idiots and boneheads and they went along with Ukraine. And now dad, the father, has to come in. Now the adults in the room has to come in and fix it. Now, a narrative like that works quite well, because there's an air of truth to it, right? Not to the overall narrative that, you know, that ignores the fact that this was a Ukraine project, right? But there's an air of truth to where we are now, in that the Ukrainians are extremely irresponsible and the EU leaders are extremely irresponsible, as is obvious by so many things. They just make themselves look like blithering idiots every day of the week. So what Trump has on his side to support that narrative is that the Ukrainians currently are not responsible actors. They're not good faith actors. The EU is currently not responsible good faith actors. So when he says these people have not been responsible good faith actors for the last 3 years, well, yeah, but neither has the US. And the US has been leading this irresponsible bad faith movement. But he just ignores that. And it works, because the US and Russia right now are clearly the adults in the room, are clearly the most rational. Now, from the Russians' perspective, what do they care? What do they care? If I'm bargaining with you, what do I care? The narrative you have to use. The Russians are pragmatic. The Russians are very bureaucratic, pragmatic kind of people. If you want to put your pen to paper, and it's going to go to the UN, it's maybe a treaty will go through to the Senate. I'll get an actual treaty, which in the United States, a treaty that's ratified by the Senate has the effect of being law, right? Of being law of the land. So if I think I can get a deal with Trump, and now Trump's ready to move on and do some things economically, look, the Russians are going to play the Trump to some extent. The Russians are now saying, yeah, you know, we got to do business with Elon Musk, right? Well, you know what the Russians are going to do? They're going to play Trump and Elon Musk like a fiddle, but not in a negative way to take advantage of them. Right? They're not trying to play them in a fiddle so they can blow up the United States or steal all the U.S.'s stuff. They're trying to play them like a fiddle so they can get the best deal that they can. right? Here's my perspective. I'm trying to buy, which I did a while back, a used pickup. I said, I want a pickup truck. I can't afford a new pickup. My God, who the hell can pay that? So I get an old pickup, but it's a pickup, 2013. But when I got the pickup, I wanted the best deal I could get for a pickup because, as you know, people like us, we ain't rich. That's why somebody like us buys a used pickup. Like I've talked to the people in the chat, maybe not all of you, but a lot of us. If we want to pick up, it's going to have to be a 2013 pickup because who the hell can afford $90 million for a pickup today or most anything else? My buddy just bought a 2016 Toyota Highlander, and I'm like, that's a nice vehicle right there. You got a good quality vehicle, got a good price, has 120,000 miles on it. You paid like 15, 14 grand. Limited with everything on it. Excellent. Good deal, right? That's what working class people can afford now. A 2015 Toyota, a 2013 friggin' Ford pickup truck. Now you're talking, this is what people like us somehow scramble around of enough pennies to get. Okay. My point being, when you're making the deal with that guy to buy that used pickup truck, you're gonna, hey, this is all, man, I trust you. Oh, this is good. You got a lot of nice pickups. I want to be friends with the guy. I want to do everything I can. Give him a sad story, limp like I got a bad back. I used to be a police officer. Oh, thank you for your service. Any game I can play. Because I want to get, if I can get another $500 or $1,000 off of that used pickup truck, I ain't a rich guy. I have a lot of money. Just a working class guy like the rest of you guys. And I got to save every penny that I can, right? So my point is, I ain't hating on Trump. And I ain't hating on the Russians for playing these games. I respect them. Trump wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He's going to go in here and rewrite the narrative to suit him so he can get the deal he wants with the Russians. The Russians are going to say, you're great, you're awesome, you're brilliant, Trump. Elon Musk, we need to do deals with you. They're going to do what they got to do to get the best deal. That is smart. That's what the Russians are doing. That it's obvious a deal. That's what the Trump crew is doing. Everybody, they both want a deal. They both know it's time to get a deal. So they're just saying, what can I do to get the best deal that I can possibly get? Hello. I can't disrespect that. Play the game. The other side has to be smart enough to recognize what you're doing, and they got to counter it. And in the end, everybody wants a deal anyway. I wanted to buy the pickup truck. He wanted to sell the pickup truck. At some point, the transaction is going to have, I'm getting a pickup truck. He knows what I'm trying to do, and I know he's trying to eat too. He's the guy that sells the pickup truck, a little old side of the road place near me that sells pickup trucks, and I know the guys there, and I know they're trying to eat too. So I'm trying to save a few bucks. They're trying to put food on the table. We can get a deal, right? The Russians, they don't want a nuclear war. They don't want a bunch of goons running around on their border. Trump wants to get an economic deal so he can move forward. Hey, everybody's trying to eat, bro. We're all just trying to eat, right? Let's get a deal. Let's play the game. Meanwhile, you got the Azov battalion in the EU. But let's hit a couple other things about this before we get to those friggin' mooks. Anyway, so one of the other advantages of Trump's narrative, right? Another advantage of Trump's narrative is quite simple. By rewriting the narrative that Ukraine and the EU are the irresponsible partners here, and that they dragged the U.S. into something that the U.S. should never have been in, and then they soaked this dry and they played Joe Biden like a fiddle, right? And they took him to the cleaners, okay? It's like if the U.S. was a corporation, the guy who ran the corporation before was an idiot, and therefore you just played him, and now I run the corporation, and I got to try to recoup as best I can all the things that the former guy, that this idiot did wrong, right? By doing that, they're going to try to get Ukraine to pay twice, right? Number one, okay, you got 350 billion out of it. Now, no doubt, plenty of it was stolen and pilfered. There ain't no question about it. But a lot of it went to where? Ukraine. No, it didn't. It went to Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, you name it, right? So the U.S., using the argument that they were buying weapons for Ukraine, took money out of the U.S. Treasury and it went straight to General Dynamics, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin. Ukraine didn't see a dime of a lot of that money, right? So they're buying stuff. Okay. So the money went into the coffers of U.S. corporations on so-called behalf of Ukraine. So U.S. already got that money once. Trump wants it back a second time. We spent, an example, let's say we gave 50 billion to Raytheon, right? It stayed in the U.S., never left our shores. But according to Trump, it, quote, went to Ukraine because it was on behalf of Ukraine. Now he's saying to Ukraine, we took 50 billion out of our treasury. We gave it to Raytheon. Raytheon's got it. It's all here in the U.S. We want you to give us that 50 billion back in our treasury. Ukraine, under Trump's, the auspices of Trump's narrative, Ukraine's got to pay twice. And you know what? And if you think about it, okay, again, let's not be moral here. Trump and Witkoff and these guys, they're New York City real estate guys, which means they know how to play with the mafia. You gotta be, you ain't gonna build in New York or run a restaurant or something unless you deal with the mafia. They understand the power dynamic. And as P.T. Barnum said, it's a crime against God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. If you got a sucker, you got to take his money, because if you don't, somebody else is going to take it. And if you're weak, they're going to take your money. They're going to take your money. They're going to take your lunch money. They're going to take everything. You're in a weak and compromising position. What do the wolves do? They're chasing after the herd, the lions, and one of the herd is slower or smaller or has a limp. Bad news for you, buddy. There's these antelope running away, but one of them he's just trying to bound, but he's got a bad leg because a crocodile bit it a week or two ago, right? He's recovering, but he's not as fast as he could be. Because, how they're going through the water, a crocodile grabbed his leg, yanked a little bit. So he's got a little bit of a limp. So the rest of the antelope can run at 35 miles an hour. He's 22, 23. What do you think the lions are going to do? Hey, that poor antelope. He's got a bad leg. Perhaps we should give him a deal. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's be fair and chase one of the young male antelopes who's in excellent condition. It'll be a little harder to get. No, that ain't the way it works in the wild. Those little lions are rubbing their hands together. They got out a knife and fork and they've got their napkin down. They said, "Man, I got bad news for you, buddy. You are coming. Guess who's coming to dinner?" That's the way it goes, right? All right. And that's real estate in New York. You ain't got the power. You know what I mean? You're going to have to, and the weak suffer what they must, right? That's how it goes, right? The strong, however that song goes, that old quote goes, like the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. The weak suffer what they must. That's how Trump and Witkoff and these guys think. So they're looking at Ukraine and they're like, yeah, where's the Ukraine project? Sure. Were you taking advantage of? Sure. But I'm a wolf or a lion. And you, sir, are an antelope with a bad hind leg. I think we know how this story ends, how this movie ends, right? And the hyenas and the buzzards all start circling around because they know the game, right? They got to eat too. So they're like, boy, there's a bad antelope. There has been studies now, and you can look online and find it, that apparently crows will work in tandem with wolves. They'll fly around and find some deer, and they'll fly back to the wolves, and they'll be like, "Hey, dude, I ain't trying to, snitch. Don't call me a snitch or anything like that. But I'm just saying there might be some deers over in that meadow to the left, a couple hundred yards over there, and one of them's got a limp." Now, I may be stretching that a little bit, but you know what I mean? So there are now actual stories in the wild of animals working together, where the crows, once the wolves get finished, the crows come in and get a little bit, and they're like, "Look, we might as well help this guy out. We're all, let's go down to, we're all trying to eat here, bro. We're all trying to eat." You see Poland, right? This guy Duda, Mr. Neocon. Oh, we're with the EU. We're standing up against Putin, all this kind of stuff. The other day, the CPAC, where the Conservative Political Action Committee, where Trump is, and he's giving his talk. Who's there? Duda. Duda's like, "Well, EU, I was with you guys. We're pals. We were bro. Man, when Biden was in, I was all together. We got to take on the Russians, this and that. There's missiles coming around, and hey, it looks like it came from the Russians. We got to do something against the Russians." Trump comes over. What's Duda doing now? Rats jumping off a sinking ship. "Well, I think we might need a peace deal." Look, what is Duda thinking? the carcass of Ukraine will be chewed up. I'm trying to eat too, man. When the lions come in, Putin, look, let's face it, the bear and the eagle. When the bear and the eagle shows up and they chew on his carcass, there's going to be a few scraps left for me. I'll move into Western Ukraine. I'll take what I want. You know, I'll get a little bit of scraps left. That's he understands the game. They're all trying to eat. Right. So now Duda has reversed course and he's going to go along with the narrative. If Trump says, yeah, we got to take some people off of the Russian border, what do you think Duda is going to fight him? Oh, dude, Duda has done a 180 and Duda's going to be, that's a great idea. Perhaps I can give you a hand, Donald Trump. Let's work together. We'll get a deal here. Oh, he'll probably have I bet if you go to Duda's office, he's probably got he had a picture of Zelensky. He's pulled it down and he's got a picture of Putin up now. Hey, it was like in the Outlaw Josie Wales, right? And it was during the Civil War, or right after the Civil War, I guess, right after the Civil War. And this guy had this business on the Missouri River, and he would had a little ferry kind of thing, and he would get people back and forth across the river, right? And then when the Northern soldiers would come up, he'd sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and he'd take them across. Then a bunch of former or current Southern soldiers would come in. He'd start singing Dixie, right? Whoever was there, the dude was trying to eat. He didn't have any friends. That's the way power dynamics work. And the idiots and clowns in the EU don't get it yet. But I think Duda gets it. And Duda's going to be, hey, man, Putin. I've always been friends with Putin. He's a nice guy. I mean, come on. Maybe in the past we had a few words, but hey, sometimes things change and you move forward with the times. Duda is going to. Somebody said I never get Garland Live notification. Yeah, that's because they don't send them out. They don't send them out. But at any rate, but click the bell and do what you can. Hope for the best. At any rate, so the truth is, if you get to it, did Ukraine make a bad decision to go to war with Russia? Sure. But it wasn't their decision, because I'll put it like this. I think it was 2012-13, 20% of Ukrainians wanted to join NATO. So the US didn't care. So the Ukrainians didn't make a bad decision. The US made a decision for them. The Ukrainians do not have agency and haven't had agency, but Trump doesn't care about that crap. It's about a narrative. In a way, it's similar to the Biden administration, because they create a narrative that they can operate in, and they utilize that narrative to their own ends, right? The difference with Trump's narrative is this. The Biden's narrative was pure fantasy, and they had no end game. Yes, we're going to take out Russia. They didn't have an end game. There's no way. What are they going to do? Go fight Russia with U.S. troops? That wasn't an option. What are they going to do? Get rid of all of their coffers, get rid of all of their ammunition, all of their money, their ammunition, their everything. And once they're as weak as they can possibly be at the end of this thing, and Russia has won, then go in and fight Russia once you're weak and worn out. They didn't have a plan. Trump's got a plan. That's the difference. He's creating a narrative, but his narrative has an end game. And the end game is, we're going to deal and ally with Putin. They want to ally with the Russians for economical purposes. And in order to do that, they've got to get this stumbling block out of the way. Keep in mind, that's what it is to Trump. This is a problem. How soon can we get this done? He's probably screaming at his people, why haven't you gotten me a deal yet? I got plans here. Big plans. I got financial, I got economic plans. I got stuff I'm trying to do. Where's my deal, man? Right? So he's pressuring his people to get a deal. And the Russians are like, okay, we're going to carefully work it. And we're going to carefully write out exactly what we want. And then we're going to give it to you. And then you can review it, because the Russians ain't in no hurry. The Russians have continued to bash the crap out of the Ukrainian army. They continue to smash the Ukrainian government into dysfunction. They continue to watch everything crumble. So the Russians are moving slow. They're taking their time. They're not in a rush to get a deal, because they're winning. And all they do is win. And so what? Yeah, we'll get a deal. Let's take our time. Oh, Trumpy, what's the rush? We can get a deal, man. Let's sit down. Let me write out what we're going to do. And they're writing out slowly. N-A-T-O. And Trump's like, would you hurry up and write the document so I can sign it? 2025, February 20. It's going to take them 8 months to write that document out. They're like, yep, we're going to write the document out. And Trump's like, wait, I got an idea. Why don't they just sign the agreement and you can write it out later and then we'll get on to the money part? Because that's what he's trying to do. This is about money. That Ukraine project is DEAD, done, finished, over. Because Trump wants a deal with the Russians. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to make a guess. Could be any number of things. Trump wants to deal with the Russians because he understands the power of Russians' diplomacy, of that Russians' international power is enormous right now, diplomatically, economically, etc. And Trump wants to ally with that. I don't think he wants to fight it. He wants to ally with that. He wants a good deal with Russia so he can use his deal with Russia as leverage for other deals. Now in the Saudi Arabia, hey, let's get something done. We need to talk with the Saudis. We need to get a deal. He wants a deal in the Middle East. I think he wants to get that deal with Ukraine so he can get the deal with the Middle East. The Saudis have made it clear, look, only thing that's going to happen here is we got to have a two-state solution. Whether you agree with 1, 2, whatever, that's up to you. The Saudis said, if you want normalization, you got to get me a two-state solution. Trump knows the Russians are very, very powerful diplomatic force in the Islamic world. And on all sides, the Gulf states love them. The Shiites love them. The Russians have the Africans, you name it. Everybody, the Russians historically, if you look around the world, they have tremendous relations because they treated people with business dignity and respect. And during the colonial times, they took the right side and fought against colonialism. Okay, so they got a lot of diplomatic capital and economic capital because they got wheat. And they got oil and they got stuff to offer. And if you're a country, you need stuff. And whatever it is, Russia can offer it. So if you're a country X and you talk to Putin, Putin can be like, what do you need, bro? Man, we're having trouble getting wheat. Yeah, we can talk. Anything else? Yeah, gas is a little. Yeah, we got that too. How about some other foods, vegetables? Yeah, nickel. We got nickel. That's all we got. We got nothing but nickel, man. We got plenty of that. So Putin, if you have a country and you need something, commodities, he's the commodity dude. You know what I mean? He's the dude that's got everything you need. So things that we can't offer, Putin can offer. And he's got alliances. Oh, I'm having trouble with China. Yeah, I'm tight with China. Yeah, having some problems with India. What's Putin going to say? Yeah, India, we're like this. You give them a good deal on oil. We sell them lots of weapons. Talk to me here. So Trump realized the importance of the Russians as a commodity and a diplomatic hub. And he wants to be able to use that as leverage, not necessarily as leverage to punch anybody, but as leverage to work with the Russians to get the deals that he wants economically, be it with Saudi Arabia, be it with China, whatever the case may be. So he's trying to get that deal. And I think the Russians are going to play it for all they're worth. And afterwards, because they're secure. Look, if you're Russia, what's number one? Every 100 years, these jackasses from the West got to come up through Ukraine and attack you. Hey, what's happening? Charles the 12th of Sweden. We're attacking Russia. Who next? Napoleon. Russia's going to get it. The Crimean War. Hey, World War II. And now these knuckle-dragging apes in the Biden administration, the Newlands and the Boltons of the world, been spoiling for a fight ever since they did it in 1991, and they finally got it. So if you're the Russians, first and foremost, you got everything you need. You just want some security on your border. That's what the Russians are looking for, right? Now, let us continue. So the bottom line is this. Now that we've set all of that stuff up, let us move on to the deal. And what are the impediments to the deal? As I've said, and I think I made it clear, it's obvious the Russians want a deal that benefits them, not just any deal, but a deal that benefits them. And if you're the Russians and you listen to the rhetoric of the Trump administration and you see the domestic economic power that Donald Trump has, massive economic power, massive political power right now. He won in a landslide. His numbers are high. He's doing all kinds of crap, right? He's never been in a better situation, right? More and more Americans are saying we want a deal. We're scared of nuclear war. He's looking good right now. Trump is at the zenith, right? He is in a crescendo of his power. An American president couldn't have. There's other things Trump's doing I absolutely disagree with, sure. But realistically speaking, the man is extremely powerful right now politically, and from a domestic perspective, right? He can get a ham sandwich through the Senate right now. Anybody he can put there. He can say, I've decided Garland's going to be the secretary of secretaries. Guess what? It'll go through. Ain't nobody challenging him. So right now, this is an opportunity where Donald Trump can literally have a treaty with the Russians, and he can get that treaty ratified in the Senate because he's got the votes for it. Come on. He got through JFK, Cash Patel, and Tulsi. There's nothing he can't get through the Senate. Right? He gets a treaty. It's literally now it becomes U.S. law. This is the perfect time. If you're the Russians, you've never had a better time. You want to get the treaty and the treaty you want. So, and in a way, one could make an argument that if you're the Russians, you might want the treaty kind of fast because dynamics could change. And before dynamics change, you know, the apes and the Azov apes end up doing something. Europe, God only knows what they do. You want to get this thing done beforehand, right? The other thing is this. There's an argument out there that Donald Trump wants to either get a deal or walk away. Will he walk away somewhat? Potentially, but not really. Let me tell you why. I don't think he will. In order to fully execute what he wants to execute, an alliance with Russia, a diplomatic and economic alliance with Russia, he needs a peace deal. And again, a peace deal with Russia gives him massive domestic power too, and allows him to align with one of the most powerful nations. Because in the world, what did we have before? We had Russia and China versus the U.S. What does Trump want? Russia, China, the U.S. as the three superpowers. What he wants to be is really, you know, the most powerful amongst three equals. He wants to say we're all equal superpowers, but we're the most powerful one, right? But he doesn't want to push it too far. He wants, hey, what did he say the other day? Oh, China this, China that. And he says, and Xi is my good friend. I like the guy, right? He's great, wonderful, best of friends, right? He wants a deal. He wants to be him and Xi and Putin together because I believe Donald Trump wants the time to come. He gave hints of this in the past. China, if you want to sell cars in the U.S., you have to build them here. And what can he do? He can then rebuild the U.S. auto industry by aligning it with China. Okay, we'll build BYD cars here, and we can now open factories back up in Ohio and Michigan and blah, blah, and build these cars to go around the world. In the United States, kind of get some of the power off of China's industry, and then we can kind of build our industries, right? That's his game plan. And I might add, well, let's continue. So he's got plans here, I think. You could agree with them or not agree with them. They got some holes in them. They got some strength in them. But that's what Trump wants. He's about economic changes. So now what happens? He's getting pissed at the Europeans. But I think ultimately Europeans have to acquiesce. Because right now, if you're the Trump administration, what are you saying? I want a deal. Europeans want a deal. I mean, the Russians want a deal. The Russians and the Americans are on the same side. They both want a deal, and they both got plans afterwards, right? But you got these Europeans, and they're going to get on your nerves. Annalena Baerbock, of all crazy people, the other day was talking about, you know, basically threatening the Trump administration. Not a smart idea. Saying that, you know, there will be a price to pay if the Americans don't go along, and if they try to force peace on us. Now think about this. The European leadership is now, you will not force peace on us. Damn you, we want war. It's war we're here for. And you will not force peace on us. Our values do not allow for peace. Okay, fine. And here's the real problem they have. The real problem that Europe has. Alligator mouth. Use one of my dad's saying, an alligator mouth and a Tweety bird ass, right? You got a lot of yap. But can you back it up? Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, as I said, Witkoff and Trump, the boys from Trump's from Queens. I think Witkoff might be from the Upper East Side. The boys from New York are going to pay you a visit. And when they pay you a visit, they're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Witkoff will make them do like you did Netanyahu. I don't want to hear about your crap. For Saturday, I'm meeting you today. At some point, Europe is yapping, Europe is griping, Europe is crying. They're making a lot of noise. At some point, this is where Trump is. I'm going to guarantee you this is what's going to happen. Because this is the way it works. This, like I said, New York, you make a deal with the mafia, you don't. You make deals with the mafia. And the mafia comes to you. At some point, they're going to have to push you, right? Some guy, I remember when I taught the organized crime, there was a story about this guy owned a strip joint, and the mafia said, we want 50% ownership of it. And the guy refused to sell, and they paid him a visit, and they said, you know, this is your last chance. The guy's like, nah, I'm not going to sell. I don't have to tell you what happened to this guy. The mafia felt like this: you're disrespecting us. When we say we want 50%, you can sell us the whole thing or 50%. And apparently it was one of the hitmen admitted that before they pumped 3 bullets into the guy, they said to him, we're trying to eat. You don't want us to eat. You're not going to let us eat, right? And they paid him a visit, and they ended up with 100% of the strip joint because his next of kin coughed up the strip joint. They knew you're playing with the mafia. Come on. Bottom line is, at some point, the Trump people are going to get a deal with the Russians. And when they do, they'll call a meeting with Starmer and maybe the whole crew, right? Schultz or whoever the hell's in charge. And they're going to say, look, we got a deal. It's a good deal. We like this deal. We need you to sign on to the deal. And we need you not only to sign on to the deal. No, not to reluctantly sign on to the deal. Not to say, yeah, okay, we'll take it. We need you to enthusiastically support this deal, because it ain't going to work unless you enthusiastically support it. We need you to go back to your respective parliaments and say it's a good deal. We need you to go to the BBC and Le Monde and DW and tell all of them, we need you to support this deal. We need you to support this deal. We expect you to support this deal. Now with Starmer, Macron, whoever the hell says, we're not doing that, we're not forcing that on us, then you push the mafia where they say, we're trying to eat and you won't let us eat. And somebody calls Trump, hey, I talked to Macron, I talked to Starmer, Macron's wiggling, I think we can get him. Starmer doesn't want to act right. What does the boss say? Freaking guy, he's a mook, huh? He's busting my chops here. Huh? This guy's a freaking mook. That's what he says, right? That's when they go, the Don, that's what they used to call him, you know, Don Corleone. The Don says, this guy's a friggin' mook. He's busting my chops here. And they go back. At that point, think about this. The power dynamic was set up by Joe Biden when he blew Nord Stream. Right? When he cut the Russians off from, the Europeans off from, sunflower seed oil, all the things they get from Russia, they're cut off from. And at that point, Witkoff or whoever can now go back to the Macrons and everybody in the world and say, you know, this thing can work out real well for us. I've talked to the Russians. They're willing to supply you with sunflower oil and gas and all that. Talk to the Russians. The Russians, they don't like you. They may not give you as good an economic deal, but they're willing to sell you this stuff again. They said, we talked to them and they said, okay, we'll sell these friggin' mooks, whatever it is they need, right? They don't like you. They called you mooks, but they're willing to sell it to you. We're willing to sign a deal. However, if you have a problem with the deal, you know, you get everything from us now. You get an LNG and oil and all kinds of things. And you know, a lot of our friends provide you with oil. Qatar, you're getting gas from them. The Russians are good friends with the Algerians, getting a lot of gas from them. You're getting oil, gas from this. We got a lot of friends out here that's providing you with a lot of nice things, including us. It would be very unfortunate for all of us if you didn't sign that deal, because us, along with our friends, may not be able to provide you with some of these goods anymore. the LNG, we got ships coming back and forth with LNG. You know, it's rough seas out there. Some of the ships could get confused and turn around and go back to port. Algeria, you know, they got a lot of customers for gas, and people are selling you wheat, sunflower seed oil. We've talked to various countries. The Qataris, they sell you a lot of gas too, but they got a lot of customers out here. We're just saying it would be unfortunate for all of us if you were not to go along with this deal, and pretty much all of the things that you need to survive as a civilization were to stop. Might I add, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, they sell 1 or 2 cars in the US. Be unfortunate if they weren't allowed to sell any. Bosch, they sell all kinds of stuff: speakers, parts, electronics, refrigerators, you name it. You don't sign this deal, we're really going to have a difficult time accepting things from countries that are so problematic. You guys were just trying to eat. You don't want us to eat. What happens to people when they try to stop us from eating? So my point is this: the time will come, the yappy mouth chumps in Europe, these clowns will be put in their place. Now, that's the nice way. I suspect Witkoff will grab them by the little their little spindly little necks and throw them in the floor. Shut up. You're taking a deal. That's what it's going to amount to. We don't want to take the deal. Shut up. You're taking a deal. You think Joe Biden was bad to you when he blew Nord Stream? We ain't going to blow Nord Stream. We're going to blow everything, and not physically blow it, but we're going to cut you off. Now, effective tomorrow, here's the piece of paper. We need your signature on this piece of paper, and not just your signature. We need your personal guarantees that you're going to support these deals, and that you're going to do everything we need you to do to make these deals, and you're not going to go back, and you're not going to gripe and whine and say it's a bad deal. You're not going to do that. You're going to support them 100% and move forward for peace. We need your personal guarantees that you'll do that. And if that doesn't happen by tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., you can call BMW, you can call Land Rover, Peugeot, any of them. Call them all and say, bad news, guys. The U.S. has cut off all imports. And you won't be able to do it anyway because the Russians have cut off gas. And the Americans have cut off gas. And the Qataris have cut off gas. And the Algerians have cut off gas. And all of America's allies. And, you know, China really wants this deal to happen too. And they said, you know, the ships that are rushing over here with these goods could start moving a little slower. So either you commit complete and total economic suicide, or you sign this deal. But we'll give you till 8 a.m. tomorrow to think about it. So that's the way the Europeans will be dealt with. They will be dealt with. The European ruling elite will be dealt with for the weak little chumps that they are, for the poodles that they are. When you are nothing but a poodle, you expect to be treated like one. And that's the way they will be treated. Now, next, let's go to the goons. Let's go to the goons. The other part of it is you created these knuckle dragging apes in Ukraine. They could be a problem because you can get a deal with human beings, but some friggin' guy who's goose stepping all over the place with Hitler tattoos all over him, he's not going to be rational. And I think the Russians, gently, put this as gently as I can, the Russians lost 27 million people to these mooks, right? I think the Russians may have a way of dealing with these people if they don't want to work things out. Right? I think the Russians have already begun to deal with these people, and the Russians have said denazification. Now, there are various ways you can denazify something. One way, for instance, let's just say you got mice. You can do something. There's things you can put down that mice don't like the smell of, and they'll run away. And you can let the mice run away. You can go in and catch the mice one by one. Now, once you catch the mice, you can take them out a long ways away in the woods and release them. It's one option. The other option is not quite as humane, and it has something to do with the mice not surviving the ordeal. All I'm saying is this. The Azov battalion and their ilk, one way or the other, they're going to be dealt with. And I think that at some point, the Trump people may say to the Russians, yeah, we're doing this, that, and the other. And they get a deal. And then Azov Nazis say, we're not going along with the deal no matter what. We're going to fight the deal no matter what. And I think, let's face it, if we're honest with ourselves, Ukraine is crawling with Russian spies. You know that. Zelensky's inner circle, no doubt, is crawling with Russians. I mean, I'm not talking out of sorts. I guarantee you there's probably more Russian spies in Ukraine than there are Ukrainians. They know where the bodies are buried. They know where people are. They know who's who. And if the Russians decided, so this weekend, with Trump people, the Nazi leadership needs to be decapitated this weekend or over the next week, I think they could find a lot and deal with them. I'm a man of great peace. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. But it is quite possible at some point that the Russians, and look, like I said, they lost 27 million people to these slumps, right? Can you really get mad with the Russians if they determine that they have to deal with denazification in, shall we say, a hands-on manner, that we may have to turn our heads? Hey, what are the Russians doing? Hey, look over there. Let's take a look over here. I'm just saying, if you ever saw The Walking Dead, there was an instance where I think it was a 14-year-old girl, and the people who were surviving in this zombie apocalypse, she was a problem. She was making noise. She thought that the zombies were going to be her friends and she could befriend them. And she was doing a bunch of things that put the entire group at great risk. And they knew if they kept her around, it was going to be a problem. And they had a decision to make. It was a decision that none of us would ever want to make, but they had a decision to make. And at some point, they took the poor 14-year-old girl out and they said to her, just look at the flowers. And she looked at the flowers. And that was the last thing she saw. I don't feel good about that, but that's why I like zombie movies. Because in zombie movies, oftentimes you get to a point where there are those kind of moral and intellectual decisions that have to be made, right? Here's the problem we got. We got, let's say, 15 survivors walking around trying to hide from zombies and survive in a zombie apocalypse. We got a 16th person who's going to put the other 15 in jeopardy of all dying. Do you keep the 16th person around knowing the other 15 are probably going to die? Or do you address the situation in a manner that you got to count? At some point you start counting, and somebody has to go look at the flowers. So I'm just saying, they're going to get a deal with the Russians. They're going to bully the EU, and they will do what the hell they want, what they're told to do at some point. And the denazification, two things will happen in Kiev, and I think it's already happening. There's no honor amongst thieves. So a lot of these, people who are thieves and criminals and oligarchs in Ukraine will do what Duda's doing in Poland. Hey, Trump and company, come on in. I want to help you with the transition. How can I be of service to you? They're going to deal with the Russians. I always love the Russians. Hey, the Russians are great people. Now they're running the show. There are a lot of people in Ukraine who are very powerful who will just flip and say, all right, hey, new people are in power. How can I make money? How can I survive? How can I keep going? And the knuckle dragging goons and Azov and stuff like that, Some of them will be taken for a walk in a meadow and asked to gaze at the flowers. I think that's going to be an issue that happens here and there. So as for Zelensky, he ain't going to have no friends, but we shall see. I do believe that one of the things is that the Trump administration, when they start getting into Ukraine, is going to want info on Biden. They're going to want info on Russiagate. Oh, man, let me just say this. Let me end by saying this. One of the things that I recall, I think it was 2017, and I was on with Lee Stranahan and this other guy, I can't remember his name. And they brought up Russiagate, and I said, the Russiagate hoax, and I said, it ain't a hoax. I said, it's an operation. It's an intelligence operation. I said, in one of these days, when and if the truth comes out about Russiagate, it will make Watergate look like a parking ticket. It will be the biggest scandal in the history of the United States, and nothing even close. That was my position in like 2017. It was so glaringly obvious that it was an intelligence operation and it was an attempted coup against the president, well, preemptive coup before he came in. Then once he came in, it was an attempted coup. And then once he got out, they still went after him to do another preemptive coup before he came in again. What an unbelievable operation. And now I think Trump's people are looking to keep digging. And I'm looking forward to that. I hope they do. I want justice. Now, as I said, there's things Trump is doing that I absolutely disagree with. I'm not a libertarian. I don't agree with libertarian politics. So I'm going to dramatically disagree with him on that. But it don't matter whether I disagree with him or not. He's in power and I ain't. And they're going to do him and the libertarian tech bros, and they're not really, they're libertarian, neoliberal, whatever you want to call them, but the tech bros who are in power have made some decisions and they're going to do what they want to do. And whether I like it or not is irrelevant. I'm just going to try to evaluate it. So here's what I have to say, everybody. Please hit the like button, number one. Number two, if you can afford it, whether it's Patreon, please. Buy a PayPal. Buy me a coffee is great because you go in there and it's like, hey, what do you do? Buy a gallon of coffee. How much? 5 beans. How many? Many as you want. And buy me a coffee, you can do like Patreon anyway, also now, where you do the buy me a coffee thing, just like Patreon. And then ultimately, it comes out, the thing pops up and says, do you want to make this monthly or do you want to be a monthly subscriber? So if you choose, hey, the great thing about buy me a coffee, you can just do $5 if you want, whatever you want, or you can be just like Patreon. So thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate this. Share this on all your social media platforms. I need to, before I go, I do want to look because we've got some super chats, and I enjoy the super chats because I get the best questions with super chats and I think people deserve. Let's go with Matthew. Will Starmer and Macron just march on in? In where? They can't. What are they going to do? They can't go in Ukraine. Look, even if you read it, what they're saying, they say, yes, we're getting troops ready to go to Ukraine. We're ready to go to Ukraine. If there's a deal and Americans and the Russians say, okay, there ain't going to be no deal. The Americans and Russians ain't going to say, okay, and they don't have the troops anyway. They're just posturing. And let me think about this. The Russians have 800,000 troops. Or let's just go drop it down to 600,000 troops. 600,000 troops they got in Ukraine. I think now the Ukrainians have 400,000 or 500,000. And Macron and all of these troops are battle hardened. They've been fighting. And I'm to believe that Macron and Starmer are going to send 30,000 troops to 800,000 on one side, let's just say 600,000 versus 500,000, 1.1 million troops. They're going to send another 30,000 who aren't battle hardened. And what are they going to use for ammunition? And how are they going to keep their supply lines going? They can, at the last minute, as this thing's crumbling apart. So they're making noise. They're going to get put in their place. That's all I'm trying to say. Oh, we're going to send 20,000 troops. Oh yeah, that's really going to change the scene. I think that's it for. All right, we look at Rockfin. I can never keep up with Rockfin, for God's sake. Okay, let's go to see, do we have any? Rumble rants, no rumble rants. If I can ever get the heck back on Rockfin, I'll see if anybody there had some questions, and then we can move on. Don't forget, everybody, smash the like button. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Crap. There we go. All right. New. All right. Somebody says, I agree with um I agree with Patrick Lancaster. Stop saying that Ukrainian conflict has been going on 3 years. That's a gross misrepresentation. Misrepresentation. It's been 11. And if Trump wants to be respectful, he should acknowledge the Russians have been putting up the U.S. Trump don't want to be respectable. Fool yourself that Trump somehow wants to be respectable. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it, everything that you guys have done to help the channel. Share this on all your social media platforms. Oh, Raphael has something to say. Is there going to be a G3? I'm not sure what you mean by G3. I wish I did. Have you considered BitChute and Blue Sky? Believe it or not, I do. I'm on BitChute. I'm on BitChute all the time. So yes, next Blue Sky. I never thought about that. Oh yeah, that'll go over real good. I actually have a Blue Sky account. That's a thought. I ought to start. Why the hell not? I ought to start going on Blue Sky. Who cares? You know what I mean? Good idea. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody. Yeah. Is there a G3? What's a G3? I don't know. G20. Is there going to be a G3? Is the question. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. That's possible. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. Have a great day. I'm out. Don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms and like and subscribe and stuff like that.